Vanoggend gesels ek met Marco Romito en dis sodat jy nie hoef nie en ons vind 'n bietjie uit oor Bloutong siekte by skape. Nou Marco is 'n senior navorsingsveearts by die Landbou Navorsingsraad en ek dink dit is belangrik om hierdie tyd van die jaar spesifiek oor hierdie tema te gesels. Marco, baie welkom by GROOTplaas. Welcome to GROOTplaas.
Yes, thank you.
I hope you are doing well. Well, when it comes to Bloutong, how is it transmitted and what exactly makes it so dangerous?
It's an insect-borne disease and is transmitted by midges, Culicoides midges, which are quite widespread. This is a disease that is endemic to Africa. It's been here for millennia and it circulates naturally in wild ruminant species and antelope. And the first cases of Bloutong were first noted amongst European breeds of sheep that were introduced into the country in the 18th century.
Yes.
So the most vulnerable animals are your European breeds of sheep, like the Merino, for instance, that was introduced in the 18th century. That's where they saw many mortalities, morbidity, and high mortalities as well. So it's a disease that has quite significant economic consequences for sheep farmers. And it also has very severe trade implications because we find widespread infection, not only in sheep, but many other ruminant species. It can affect other ruminants as well, but not necessarily cause disease. So cattle are often also infected, but usually only develop very mild disease or remain asymptomatic.
Yes.
Similarly with goats, goats usually don't show symptoms, and all your indigenous breeds of sheep, for instance, your fat-tailed sheep breeds don't develop symptoms usually, but they do get infected. And cattle can also be reservoirs of the virus, and the virus can circulate in them for a long time periods and not necessarily induce any disease in cattle.
Why the name Bloutong? And does that indicate some of the symptoms that would show or indicate infection that has taken place in sheep?
So that was some of the first signs that was seen when Bloutong was first recognized, the swelling of the face and the ulcerations in the mouth, and the swelling of the tongue causing a blue cyanotic appearance. So that's where the name originally arose. It doesn't always appear, but that can happen. It's due to the severe inflammation on the mucosal surfaces of the mouth and the nose, nasal cavity. Also, you get inflammation above the hooves, and that can cause lameness as well. And you may also get some damage to muscle tissue also.
Are these symptoms, would you say they are easily detected?
Bloutong can be quite classical, but as is often the case with disease, it can have a whole spectrum of manifestations, and that can be confused with a range of other diseases as well. So if you're milder forms, it could be many other viral infections. If you just have a fever reaction, for instance, in cattle as well, generally milder, and there can be many other diseases that can present in a similar fashion. In sheep, for instance, it could be anything from ORF to peste petit ruminants, which we don't have in this country, but also photosensitivity due to certain plant toxins and fungal toxins to cause swelling of the face. Foot and mouth is also one of the diseases that can resemble Bloutong, with the mouth ulcerations and the inflammation above the hooves, for instance.
Yes.
And in cattle, you could have malignant catarrhal fever, which is a common disease. They could also present in a similar fashion. So yes, there could be many other diseases. They could also have similarities to Bloutong. But usually the classical symptoms of the ulcers of the mouth in an environment where there's a high midge population and seasonally present, then you know that it's most likely to be Bloutong, but there are tests that can confirm its presence.
How does infection take place or spread take place between sheep?
So it's not a contagious disease. In other words, sheep don't infect each other, but it's spread through the insect vectors. So they pick up the virus replicates in these midges, and this is how it spreads. And wherever there are midges, you have the risk of introducing Bloutong. And Bloutong is already spread out of Africa, being endemic in Africa, to various other continents. It's already present in Southern Europe. It's endemic there. It's in Asia, Americas, Australia. So it really has spread either through infected animals or through midges that have blown across waterways, for instance, or introduced into areas via boats, etc. So that's how it's been introduced into other areas as well.
Marco, we're going to continue our chat just now. Ons gaan net gou eers 'n bietjie finansies gesels met FR+.
FR+, grow and guard your wealth.
Direkteur van FR+, Marisha Gordon kuier vanoggend hier by ons in die GROOTplaas ateljee en ek wil daarom ook net noem FR+ is 'n private ekwiteit beleggingsplatform en geregistreerde FSP. Goeiemôre Marisha.
Goeiemôre Franswa.
Nou waarop is julle as besigheid baie trots by FR+?
So ons het gevind dat daar 'n leemte in Suid-Afrika is vir individue om in versekerde bates te belê en dis dan nie blootgestel word aan die uitstekende opbrengskoerse wat dit bied nie. Ons is dan ook baie trots om die go-to partner te wees, verskoon my Engels, vir individue om ons te kom vir beleggingsprodukte om te verseker dat hulle finansiële posisie beter en sterker word, maar ook ons versekeringsoplossings wat dit dan beskerm.
Nou ek sien julle bied hier tans beleggings aan individue soos jy nou genoem het en dan ook is julle 'n finansiële dienste verskaffer. Vertel vir ons bietjie van die produkte wat julle bied.
Ja, so die twee beleggingsprodukte wat ons het is in skuldbriewe en die ander een in voorkeuraandele. Die vorige keer het ek met Mia lekker gesels oor die voorkeuraandele wat ons het in 'n mega melkboer wat in Dundee is en dit het 'n 16.25% nabelaste opbrengskoers. Ongelukkig is hierdie 16.25% koers als opgeneem vir beleggers, maar ons gee nog steeds die geleentheid vir ander beleggers om in dieselfde boerdery te belê, maar net teen 12% nabelasting per jaar. Die belegging in skuldbriewe aan die ander kant is 'n manier om vir ons beleggers bloot te stel aan hoër opbrengskoerse en daar's 'n vaste rentebetaling wat maandeliks plaasvind en hierdie skuldbriewe word in terme van 'n prospektus geregistreer.
Okay, nou jy het nou so vinnig genoem oor die syfers van die ander produk, maar die opbrengs van wat beleggers kry uit die skuldbriewe, hoe werk dit en wat is die beleggingsterme?
So die skuldbriewe verdien 'n renteopbrengs van 1.8% voorbelasting per maand, wat relatief baie hoog is, en dan het ons ook 'n 30-dag kennisgewingperiode waar ons beleggers dan geen ekstra heffings of boetes hoef te betaal nie.
Is dit veilig om in skuldbriewe te belê? Is dit hoë risiko neem ek aan?
So die skuldbriewe word deur 'n fisiese bate geondersteun wat verseker is en hierdie bate word in FR+ se naam geregistreer. Ons is trots daarop om te kan sê dat hierdie bates maklik is om te verkoop indien daar risiko's is en dis maklik, wel die mooi woord is om vir likwiditeit, sowel as dis maklik om te verseker en te waardeer wat dit 'n baie maklike en praktiese oplossing is vir privaat ekwiteit.
Okay, nou as mense meer wil uitvind oor hierdie beleggings by FR+, hoe werk dit? Hoe maak hulle met julle kontak?
So ons het 'n webtuiste wat die mense kan besoek wat www.frplus.co.za is. Daar's 'n kontakvorm wat hulle kan invul en iemand van ons span sal uitreik. Hulle kan ook direk 'n e-pos stuur aan info@frplus.co.za as hulle sommer direk met ons wil kontak maak. En ons webtuiste sit die skuldbriewe en die voorkeuraandele met al hulle dokumentasie baie mooi uiteen met al die terme en voorwaardes, so hulle kan ook in hulle eie tyd mooi deur dit lees.
So op die webblad kan hulle al die inligting kry.
Al die inligting wat hulle nodig het.
info@frplus.co.za, e-posadres. Gaan na frplus.co.za, dit is die webblad waar jy meer inligting kan kry en onthou FR+ is 'n geregistreerde FSP. Bly ingeskakel vir nog GROOTplaas.
FR+, grow and guard your wealth.
Ek gesels steeds verder met Marco Romito en hy is 'n senior navorsingsveearts by die Landbou Navorsingsraad en ons fokus 'n bietjie vanoggend op Bloutong by skape. Marco, can you tell me why is Bloutong seen as such a complex disease?
I think it's challenging in terms of control because there are so many serotypes. In South Africa, or in Africa, we have most of the serotypes. In South Africa, we have at least 22 of them have been identified. There are about 29 different serotypes that so far have been detected, and they're still further likely to be found. So that complicates control substantially, particularly from the vaccine point of view. To try and adequately cover all these important serotypes is a challenge.
Yeah.
And also because it infects many different ruminant species, it circulates amongst wild ruminants, and then of course it's also complicating control measures in terms of for sheep farmers having to implement vaccination strategies to try and cover all these different strains. Requires administration of 3 doses of vaccine separated at 3-week intervals. It shouldn't be done. apologies. Shouldn't be done when animals are breeding, because it can cause temporary infertility. It shouldn't be administered to pregnant ewes, especially during the first half of pregnancy. You might get abortions. And also, one has to keep in mind that maternal antibodies could interfere with the immunization, success of immunization. So your lambs shouldn't be immunized at too young an age, because it's a live vaccine, and the antibodies obtained from the dam can interfere with immunity. So it complicates management somewhat, and one has to plan very carefully your whole breeding strategy, vaccination, whether it's spring or autumn lambing, all of that has to be carefully planned. And as I said, we are endemic. So Bloutong is endemic in South Africa, and has a lot of consequences that come from that.
Marco, I would love to hear from you. When it comes to different times during the year, how do seasonal changes affect the occurrence of Bloutong outbreaks? Are there certain seasons where it's just a bigger problem than others?
So, yes, so we are seasonally endemic for Bloutong. And that means that usually you see cases arising in the second half of summer, and it proceeds right into winter until the first frosts arrive and the cases drop precipitously. So the virus kind of builds up in the population, the reservoirs, and in the insect population as well. The density of midges as well plays an important role. So the second half of summer is when the cases start to really arise.
Yes.
It's very similar to the situation we see with African horse sickness, which is also caused by an Orwe virus. Similar epidemiology, also transmitted by Culicoides midges. Again, the second half of summer is when the cases really emerge at its most. But in species like cattle or goats, you can pick up virus for quite long thereafter. It can still circulate. But in terms of clinical disease, cases of disease is usually the second half of summer and into early winter that we see most cases occurring. Other factors that play a role are rainfall, perhaps. The midges like to breed in low-lying areas, marshy areas, also in cattle dung as well. So it's one of the control measures is to keep sheep away from those areas where there might be high levels of midges present.
Yes.
And
What would you say?
And also from a climatic point of view, I would say, with climate change, this has led to spread of the vectors into other areas. So this change in vector presence is also a contributing factor to the spread of disease into other areas.